Okay, is there a better way of saying this? I don't think so. This episode is going to be based around a lot of assumptions. Like, I think that's the easiest way that I can describe it. Just mostly considering that there's a lot of foresight that's used in the making of this episode. Although there are a couple of facts that will be stated, or maybe some stats and shit like that. But all in all, it won't be as boring and as bland as facts would probably be. Even though they are mostly just opinions, of which, opinions are kind of like assholes, everyone has at least one of them. Although, speaking of assholes, another thing that people have one of, at least for every person, is birthdays. And unfortunately, there's a country in which if you forget your wife's birthday, you may get up to 5 years in jail for doing so. Now, I'm trying to think about this in a practical way, and this is kind of wild. Imagine you being someone's bitch in prison because you forgot your missus' birthday. Like, imagine you checking in and sharing a bunker with some other big dude, and you ask him what he's inside for, and he's like, oh, some 5 people attacked my family, and I defended and I killed them all, so I'm in for murder. And then he turns to you, looking at you, thinking that you're a beast of a person to be put with him, and then he asks you what it is that you did, and then you're like, I forgot my wife's birthday.
The royal penis is clean, Your Highness.
Alright, I know some women would listen to information like this and they're like, yes, this is good, at least it'll force men to know, blah, blah, blah. We need some things like this in our own country, blah, blah, blah. But the reality of it is, this is a big part of the reason why some of us don't want y'all in leadership. Because it institutes some of these things and it would end up biting us in the ass. Because if we actually let the entire place get run by women, they'd have included shit like the kids' birthdays, the anniversary and shit like that, which is probably a little much for some guys to remember, considering that they still have to remember a bunch of other things. But all in all, let me just read the small caption that came with this particular story. So it says, and I quote, "In Samoa, a Polynesian country, forgetting your wife's birthday is considered a crime potentially leading to fines or a 5-year imprisonment for repeat offenses. The law aims to maintain marital harmony with a dedicated police team ensuring compliance. Warnings precede penalties and awareness campaigns inform wives about their rights under this unique legislation." End quote. Okay, so there's like a full-on enforcement around this thing. Like, I'm trying to think of how it is I'd explain to the cops who've come to arrest me because I forgot my wife's birthday that it was an error in the calendar or my watch was having an issue with the date function or some shit. Like, it would be hard as fuck to try and explain stuff like that. Although, interestingly enough, in as much as these guys are so big on the birthday and you recognizing the day, this country just so happens, because I did a bit of research, to be on the international date line. All right, the international date line kind of cuts across around the Samoan region. And if you take like a 30-minute boat ride, you could typically go to yesterday as per, the location on the planet and shit. So if your wife claims that you're suddenly not that aware of her birthday, all you have to do is just travel to yesterday and be like, it's not your birthday yet. Like, I'll tell you tomorrow. And as that's happening, you can just sail in with a nice happy birthday message and a cake and shit and you're good. Of which, I don't even think most of that shit's necessary. As long as you're just using Facebook and you have her added as a friend, you'll probably find that shit out like in the morning. So I don't see how something like this would be that enforceable if you have Facebook. Although then again, I wouldn't know too much about Samoa because I'm in Kenya and I have a podcast that I'm doing, which I should have probably started in a much nicer way, at least for us guys, by saying, welcome to the Breaktime Podcast, the podcast where I talk about love, sex, and relationships from a guy's perspective, as well as a bunch of other guy shit. The man on the mic is a man who is glad he's not Samoan. Otherwise, I'd be prepping for prison because I'm not about to be someone else's bitch just because I didn't remember my wife's birthday. He's a man who believes astrology should have been the study of ass. It is none other than your tall, dark, and mildly handsome man, Sir Denver B. This is a pretty interesting way to start the episode, not necessarily because I'm talking about another country, but just the fact that remembering someone's birthday has never seemed like such a criminal offense, except to women. But then again, there's a lot of things that, given the option, would actually end up being criminal offenses if we allowed women to have full control over the legislation and enforcement of a lot of things. But all in all, let me not sound like a misogynist. Actually, if someone was to listen to this episode from the beginning, they'd be like, this guy is such a misogynist. Why does he hate women so much? And the truth of it is, I actually love women. It's just that there's some things that I find particularly peculiar with some of you guys. And, let's just be honest, girl math only works in a girl's head. Like, there's no way that boy math will interfere with that and suddenly come to the same exact conclusion. But then again, that's just a me thing. And, I guess, girl math can be done by a gay guy, or so I've thought. But all in all, welcome and thank you for listening to this episode. I hope you listened to it all the way till the end. It's not as boring as I made it sound at the beginning, but we'll see. Now, I have a main topic that I need to get to, and I will do that in a bit. But before I do that, I wanted to talk about the thing that rocked the internet for a little bit and, was trending in quite a number of places, which I guess was a bit anticlimactic for some of us. That thing was Epstein's list. Now, for those of y'all that have no idea or haven't been on the internet that long, Jeffrey Epstein, the guy that, was known for doing quite a bit of sex trafficking with underage girls, had some information on the number of different politicians, powerful people, celebrities, and so on that visited his place and went to his island to possibly partake in the skin trade that he supposedly ended up being so well known for before he died. Now, that information remained sealed away from the public, but towards the end of last year, a judge asked for the documents to be unsealed. Now, of course, this unsealing meant that there was going to be information on all of these powerful people and these celebrities that partook in this entire thing, and a lot of people were looking forward to their names being published and these people being outed. I personally thought that the list wouldn't come out, mostly because it's powerful people and they wouldn't let such information get to the limelight, or so I thought. But, it seems like it actually came out. And, a couple of names came out, and apparently, as of the time of this recording, journalists are still trying to piece together whose name is there, what name was there. But at least for starters, we got a couple of names. Now, the names that were supposedly mentioned so far are Prince Andrew, Bill Clinton, Stephen Hawking, yes, Stephen Hawking, and Michael Jackson, at least as of the time of this recording. Now, having looked at the number of names that are there, much as yes, I know journalists are combing through everything, blah, blah, blah. To be very honest, the way I look at it, this was just some shit that was meant to keep the public at bay. I honestly don't think these guys are really going to publish the actual list, and if they are, because I know a bunch of lawyers went to court and they asked for certain people's names to be kept anonymous and shit, I know that there's going to be quite a number of names that we'll just never really see there. And I believe most of those names are going to be classified as anonymous, just for the sake of quote-unquote privacy that all of these people who sent their lawyers to court will probably have asked for. So the entire time, people are waiting on the rest of Epstein's list, and I honestly don't even think it's going to be that interesting. Mostly because if you already look at the list that's here, it's either people are not relevant, at least in public society, or they're already dead. Because you look at it, Prince Andrew, okay, personally, I saw the whole Prince Andrew thing in a mini documentary on YouTube about Epstein's thing about a year or two back. So I didn't really think that there was anything new seeing Prince Andrew's name there. Bill Clinton, there wasn't much that I found to be that surprising with him, considering that I know this guy has always been about the pussy, except his wife's, as we all know with Monica Lewinsky and shit. But, it was a little bit of an interesting twist finding out that he likes little kids. We knew that he liked pussy, we just didn't know that he liked it younger, But all in all, he's not a super public figure, and he's not really in the current limelight, so he's not relevant enough that it's such a big issue. So he's technically a has-been for all we know. But Michael Jackson, they stated that he was there, and personally I've always believed that he's not the pedophilia type. And the documents just showed that he was at Epstein's place, but he didn't really get a massage, so At least I don't think he did anything there. But considering that most people believe the whole narrative of Michael Jackson likes little kids, blah, 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 it kind of makes sense to have his name there, so that people can sort of satisfy that belief and be like, but MJ was there and shit. So like it kind of just adds some sort of credibility to the entire thing. The surprising one that we all never expected was Stephen Hawking. Like this guy, like this is a man of science that we saw beat the odds to come up with discoveries that have been important to the scientific community. But now that we saw his name in this list, we can clearly see that this was a man of science who beat the odds while little girls were beating his meat. And while he did that, he came up with some particular discoveries that improved the scientific community. So at the end of the day, like his legacy is slightly tarnished, but it's mostly tarnished for the time being. The thing with dead people is your legacy is pretty much going to stay the same based off of how you lived and people remembered you from how you lived, as opposed to new information that comes up after you die. A good example is Michael Jackson, who a lot of people believed was a pedophile or just liked little kids and, he used to touch them a certain way. Even though you tell them that Michael Jackson did nothing, they'll still believe that Michael Jackson was a pedophile. Or even if you look at someone like Mahatma Gandhi, like people look at Mahatma Gandhi as this person who preached peace and, he was this very nice Zen human being. But no one's going to sit back and be like, well, this guy used to sleep with little girls as well to test his chastity and shit. Like, there's no one that's coming up to question the legacy of a man like that, because you remember him based off of how he was spoken about when he was alive as opposed to when he died. So for the most part, this list seems a bit scammy to me. It's kind of like opening up Area 51 for people, but making sure you've moved everything so no one can really see what was really happening in Area 51. So you get to satisfy people's conspiracy theories, but at the same time, you get to hide the actual shit that was going on. Although, then again, let me not give too much time to this because I don't entirely believe in this list all that much, and move things on to the main topic of this episode. Now, considering that this is coming out at the beginning of the year, well, a couple of days after the beginning of the year, and a lot of people are very optimistic about the year, I noticed that some content creators were giving expectations and possible trends that are to be expected this year. So for example, I was watching Marques Brownlee on YouTube. He was busy talking about expectations for tech in 2024, which was pretty interesting. And also, while I was checking the news website viralty.co.ke, which I also do articles for every so often, I noticed that they had also done an article busy listing the expected dating trends for the year of 2024. Now, having been someone who has been in the podcasting industry for a little over 4.5 years, and as someone that talks quite a bit about relationships, sex, and dating, when I kind of thought about it, I was like, you know what? I've probably consumed enough information and I've dealt with enough cases and noticed enough things that I could probably give a certain number of expectations for the year of 2024 in the realm of love, sex, and relationships, and more so the dating market. So I figured, you know what, let me just come up with a list of my own where I list my expectations for the dating market in 2024 for the realm of love, sex, and relationships that will probably at least give an idea of what to expect this year. Not that people are going to go and date with like a prospectus or some shit, but essentially it's my way of saying this is what we should probably expect if you're in the dating market, or if you end up in the dating market for one reason or another. Now, one of the first things that I believe is probably going to happen is there's going to be more loneliness than ever, just mostly because that's what's been happening with the West, and we usually tend to trail behind, and some of the effects of the things that happened actually come and hit us here. And also, when you kind of look at it, people are making a lot less. The economy, at least as of right now, isn't doing all that great, so there's not that much disposable income for people to have moving around. And as a result, if you don't have money like that, especially if you're a guy, then for you to decide that you want to go and date might become a little bit of an issue. On top of that, if there's women that are making more money than you, they will definitely want a guy that makes even more money than them. So it's very, very possible that some women, because they don't notice a certain group of guys, because they're not classified as potentials, will feel as though the dating market has fewer potential guys than they previously thought. Also, on top of that, there's a statistic which came out last year which showed that there's a massive number of people between the ages of 21 and 29 that are still staying with their parents. They haven't moved out, they haven't tried to get a place of their own, and the percentage was one of the highest that it's ever been. Now, granted, you can refute this because these were stats that are for the States, and in the previous episode I was busy arguing that that doesn't represent the entire world. But considering that the economy hasn't been doing that great, considering that there's a lot of companies that have closed down, that have left the country, thus there's more unemployed people and the job market is quite competitive, there's definitely a lot more people, more so guys, who as a result of them not being financially stable or even having money or a source of income will probably not move out of their parents' houses or might end up moving back to their parents' houses. So that will definitely lead to fewer guys that are date-worthy material because they're still staying with their folks, or they've moved back to their folks, or they're not even in the best financial position to do much, meaning that there's going to be these guys that are alone. These women are going to be like there's no suitors and they'll also be alone, so generally more loneliness. Now, the next expectation that I have is that hookup culture is pretty much still going to be the same. That one, I feel like it wasn't going to change either way. Just mostly because in as much as yes, there's people that are getting older and they want to leave the dating market, so they want something more serious, there's definitely still quite a number of young people that are still in the whole exploration phase. And considering that most people nowadays are having sex before they're going on dates, it's not uncommon to find that people are having a thing getting into situationships which aren't lasting that long. And as usual, when that's happening, there could be someone who's banging someone else. And a lot of people are, sort of enjoying some of their whole phases as of right now. But even without the whole phase, people are just having a lot more sex and they're not getting into as committed of relationships. So hookup culture is probably still going to remain the same. What is going to go up, much as people might not have thought about it, is the skin trade, aka sex work, aka anything from you sharing nudes online to you having an OnlyFans and having custom videos for people, to you having a mubabas that you are sleeping with for money, or you are sleeping with them because they have money and you're hoping to gain from it. That is definitely going to face an uptick this year, just mostly because there's a lot more mainstream acceptance of it. And I know there's someone who's gonna be like, oh, you don't have stats for this, so it's probably bullshit, blah blah blah. But to be very honest, considering that there's more and more people that are coming out and stating that they have an OnlyFans and they're from Kenya or in Kenya, then you find that there's more people who look at it as a viable source of income and they get into it. Of course, the women that are going for the mubabas, that are going to be with married men or just older men because of money, of course, those ones have been there and there's way more acceptance that's coming along. Actually, I remember there was a time when some guy had posted up something on Reddit, busy talking about how it's getting out of hand. A friend of his that he knew from way back when, where they were growing up, he met with her and they went for lunch, and I think she asked him for money and she was willing to fuck him for it, and the guy was quite dumbfounded, and she was like, oh, my parents don't have money like that and I need to survive and I'm in school, blah blah blah. So she was very comfortable being in the skin trade for it. And as I was busy waiting for people to be like, oh, this is getting super bad, oh, blah blah blah, like everyone in the comments was like, why the fuck are you having so much of a problem with her? Like, she's doing her thing to make money, like leave her be. So the entire time I was just reading the comments, and there were so many people that were on her side of things as opposed to his side, where it's like, oh my goodness, this is so bad, that I actually started to understand that there's way more people that are becoming way more accepting of the fact that there's people that are doing it and that it's almost a normal thing. So if you have that happening, then there's definitely going to be an uptick. People saw this with cheating, people saw this with so many other things in relationships. So this is something that's definitely gonna go up. Then, at least on a positive note, I personally think that, the whole men versus women conflict that usually happens online is going to go down, just mostly because I think people are slowly getting tired, or at least most people nowadays are pretty tired of the whole men versus women narrative that's been going on. It's been something that's happened for years, and I think people were getting in and learning about it, especially during COVID. And it's something that has really, really annoyed people. People have just gotten to the point where they have gotten fatigued from having those discussions. I don't think that everyone will be on the whole, we're similar, but we should love each other, blah, blah. But I think more people are going to go into their own cocoons and be like men this or women that. But all in all, I hope that more and more people acknowledge the similarities, but also recognize and appreciate the differences. Now, with that said, I think there's going to be a reduced use of dating apps, just mostly because I think we've gotten to the point where, as Kenyans, as people in general, we have seen dating apps. We know how dating apps work. We know how disproportionate they can be in terms of giving some people, better matches versus others. We know that there's a lot of people that use Tinder for hookups, and as a result, you know that if you're going to look for a hookup, then that's when you're going to Tinder, but you won't be looking for anything serious. And as a result, there's way more people that are skeptical of dating apps, because not unless you're trying to look for someone to hook up with, or you're not looking for something particularly serious, then you probably won't be using the app itself. Now, all that said, of course, there's still going to be people that will be using the apps, but for the most part, I expect most people to be using the apps mostly just for fun or some sort of amusement during a pastime, just to, get some shits and giggles. Or it'll be some of the women who are busy trying to solicit sex for money, or just trying to solicit money from men, and maybe even young men who are trying to solicit money from women. But all in all, I do expect that the use of dating apps will really take a bit of a dive. Now, the thing that I do expect to increase, though, is the number of pet parents or plant parents. I've actually just remembered that one right now. And more so the moms as opposed to the dads, because I've noticed that there's been a lot of women that are becoming some sort of a pet mom or some sort of a plant mom. Of course, there's definitely going to be a guy or two here and there that could try that, but it's mostly something that I've seen with women, and I do expect it to increase. Now, my reasoning behind it is, if you look at the number of lonely people that are going to increase, of course, they are going to want to find some sort of emotional attachment or some sort of sentimental value in something, so that they can at least, continue being happy while they're not with anyone. And for a lot of women, especially since it's becoming a trendy thing, getting a pet might actually be a pretty good idea. I have friends who have cats. I know one or two people that are looking towards getting something like a dog. And of course, there's been the rise of plant moms, something that they can nurture and care for that can make them quite happy. And for the most part, even though it won't give you a nut, it kind of helps fulfill some level of emotional attachment, which, a lot of women are actually seeking to, kind of fulfill. Now, this is something that I also noticed a lot of people in the West have done quite a bit, where they have, instead of trying to look for a partner, they get some sort of an animal as a pet, and they keep that pet and they kind of nurture and maintain a relationship with them, which sort of is supposed to be, a way of filling in that void of having a partner or possibly even having kids. And I expect that to bleed over to this part of the world as well, because these are the same people that make TikTok videos that a lot of people from this part of the world consume. So if it exists as a viable option for them, then it also works. Also, for the people that are in some sort of relationship or were in some sort of a relationship that wasn't all that great, or the previous partner that you had treated you like shit and you feel like you don't want to be with guys or girls anymore, then this also exists as a potential option nowadays, and there's quite a number of people that are going for it. So yeah, it's a viable option for a lot of people this year that I expect to actually have a bit of an uptick. So if you're looking to get into the business of dealing with like animal feeds for like poodles and shit, this might be a good time to really push on your brand. But all in all, to kind of conclude all of this, of course, all of these are just assumptions. Most of them are mainly just based off of opinion. But this is stuff that we expect to happen this year. Of course, it's not like I have a projection chart for all of these things or can even measure it, but considering how information flows from the West to here, considering how people are behaving in this part of the world, then it is very expected. Now, of course, I also don't expect that everything that I've said will come to pass, but I do believe that some, if not most of the things that I've mentioned will actually become a reality. The best part about it is only time will tell. So maybe if it does happen to pass and you notice some of those things, then you can hit me up and tell me that it's okay. But for the most part, I could be wrong about everything, so I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open. On IG, it is at the breaktime_podcast. On Facebook, it is at the breaktime podcast. On Twitter, or is it X, it is at Bagaka the D. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.
But what I believe is that if you put a pastor and a prostitute in one room, one is likely to convert the other.